Imagine waking up one ordinary morning, stretching your arms and getting ready for another day. You have your coffee, give your family a goodbye kiss, and head off to work. Everything seems normal until, in a matter of hours, your life turns upside down. Your phone won't stop ringing. Bad news arrives one after the other. Your company went bankrupt. Your house caught fire. Your loved ones were in a terrible accident. In the blink of an eye, everything you built over years is gone. How would you react? Would you get angry? Would you fall into depression? Would you blame God? Now imagine that in the midst of all this chaos, your closest friends show up. Great, right? Finally, someone to offer comfort. But what if, instead of support, they started pointing fingers, suggesting that you must have done something terrible to deserve all this? This is not the plot of a drama movie. It's the real story of a man named Job, whose life challenges us to reflect on the meaning of suffering, the nature of faith, and the true character of friendship. Get ready for a trip back in time, to an era where easy answers didn't exist, and where an ordinary man found himself at the center of a debate in the heavens. But before we delve into this fascinating story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. This way, you won't miss any episode of this series about biblical characters who challenged time and remain relevant to this day. Now that you are subscribed, let's unravel together the mysteries and lessons that the story of Job has to teach us. Let's go back in time to an era known in the Bible as the days of the patriarchs. We're talking about a period that precedes the Exodus, even before Moses led the people of Israel out of Egypt. It's a very different world than what we know today. Our setting is the land of Uz, a place mentioned in the scriptures, but whose exact location remains a mystery. Some scholars believe it was east of Israel, perhaps in the region between Edom and Arabia. Imagine vast golden plains under an infinite sky, where the horizon seems to merge with the land. In those days, there were no nations as we know them today. People lived in tribes and clans, led by respected patriarchs. There were no kings or organized armies. Wealth was measured in herds, servants, and children. A man with many sheep, camels, and a large family was considered truly blessed by God. Life was governed by the rhythm of the seasons. People depended on rain for their crops and their animals. A drought could mean famine and misery. Therefore, the relationship with the divine was so important. Each family had its own rituals of worship, with the patriarch acting as a kind of priest. In this world, the idea of a single, all-powerful God as worshipped by Job was revolutionary. Most people believed in many gods, each responsible for different aspects of nature and life. Job's faith in one God made him unique in his time and place. Justice was simple and straightforward. People believed that God, or the gods, immediately rewarded good and punished evil. Prosperity was seen as a clear sign of divine favor. Suffering, on the other hand, was interpreted as punishment for some hidden sin. It is in this setting that we find Job, a man whose life was about to challenge everything people in his time believed about God, justice, and the meaning of suffering. But who exactly was this man named Job? What was his life like before disaster struck him? Just as Job lived in challenging times, we too face challenges to our faith, today more than ever. That's why I'd like to share with you a valuable resource, the Christian Survival Manual. This guide was prepared with great care to help you strengthen your faith and protect your family from the negative influences of the modern world. In the pinned comment below this video, you will find the link to download the ebook. But download it now, because it could disappear at any moment. Don't wait. Continuing. In the lands of Uz lived our character Job. The Bible describes him as the greatest of all the men of the East, but his greatness went far beyond his earthly possessions. Imagine Job, a tall man of majestic bearing, with a gray beard that reflected wisdom. His eyes, deep and gentle, carried the gleam of someone who knew God intimately. When he walked down the streets, people stopped to greet him, not only for his wealth, but for his irreproachable character. Job's blessings were abundant. His herds covered the hills as far as the eye could see. 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, forming caravans that seemed endless, 500 yoke of oxen, plowing the fertile fields, and 500 female donkeys carrying precious goods. It was a fortune that made merchants' eyes gleam with admiration. But Job's true wealth lay in his family. 7 sons and 3 daughters filled his house with laughter and joy. Each of them had their own home, a sign of prosperity at the time. Family feasts were legendary, banquets that lasted for days, where wine flowed freely and stories stretched into the night. Every morning, before the first ray of sun touched the horizon, Job would rise. With careful steps, he would ascend to a small stone altar he had built on top of a hill. There, he would offer sacrifices, not just for himself, but for each of his children. "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts," he would murmur as the fire consumed the offerings. The aroma of the sacrifice would rise to the heavens, a testament to Job's devotion and his fear of God. The scriptures tell us that Job was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. His reputation spread throughout the region. The poor blessed him for his generosity. The orphans found in him a defender, and those who were perishing received his help. Job was a righteous judge, a wise counselor, a loyal friend. It seemed nothing could shake Job's blessed life. His faith was strong, his integrity unshakable. But behind the scenes of the universe, a conversation was about to take place, a conversation that would turn Job's world upside down. In the celestial realm, where angels gather before God's throne, an unexpected figure emerged. Who was this visitor? And why would his presence cause God himself to say, "Have you considered my servant Job?" The heavenly challenge. Imagine a scene beyond human comprehension. God's throne, surrounded by radiant celestial beings. It's a day like any other in eternity, when suddenly, an unexpected figure appears among the sons of God. It is Satan, the adversary, the accuser. God, in his infinite wisdom, begins a dialogue that will forever change Job's life. "Where have you come from?" the Creator asks, although he already knows the answer. Satan replies with a touch of arrogance, "From going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it." It is at this point that God asks a question that echoes through the ages. "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on earth. He is blameless and upright. He fears God and shuns evil." We can almost see the gleam in Satan's eyes, a malicious smile forming on his lips. "Does Job fear God for nothing?" he challenges. "Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his livestock has spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and surely he will curse you to your face." The challenge is issued. Satan accuses Job of being faithful only because of the blessings he receives. He suggests that Job's faith is superficial, based only on prosperity. God, in his sovereignty, allows Satan to test Job. "Very well," says the Lord. "Everything he has is in your hands, only do not touch him." At this point, Job's fate is sealed. Without knowing it, he becomes the center of a heavenly test. His faith, his integrity, his love for God, everything will be put to the test in ways he could never imagine. Meanwhile, on earth, Job continues his life, oblivious to the drama unfolding in heaven. He wakes up one more day, grateful for his blessings, unaware that his life will soon change drastically. What will happen when Satan starts to act? How will Job react when everything he loves is taken from him? And most importantly, will his faith withstand the most severe test a human can face? The storm is forming on the horizon, ready to crash over Job's life, and when it arrives, nothing will be the same. Job's fall. The sun rose as it did on any other day in the land of Uz. Job woke up early, as usual, to offer sacrifices for his children. Little did he know that this would be the day his life would change forever. While the aroma of the offerings still rose to the heavens, a servant came running, out of breath and with eyes wide with terror. "My lord," he cried, "the Sabaeans attacked. They took the oxen and the donkeys and killed the servants with the sword. Only I escaped to tell you." Before Job could process the news, another servant came stumbling. "Fire fell from the sky and burned the sheep and the shepherds. Only I survived to tell you." Job's heart hardly had time to absorb the shock when a third messenger appeared. The Chaldeans formed 3 groups and attacked the camels. They took them all and killed the servants. I escaped alone to warn you. Job stood there, stunned, watching his wealth disappear in minutes. But the worst was yet to come. A 4th servant arrived, trembling and with tears in his eyes. "Your sons and daughters were feasting in the house of the eldest son, when a strong desert wind struck the house on all four sides. It collapsed on them, and they all died. Only I escaped to tell you. Job's world crumbled. In a single day, he lost everything: wealth, servants, and most devastatingly, all of his children. The pain was unbearable, beyond any human description. At that moment, Job did something amazing. The Bible tells us, "Then Job arose, tore his robe, and shaved his head, and he fell to the ground and worshipped. And he said, 'Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I shall return. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord.'" Even in the face of the deepest pain, Job did not curse God. His faith, though shaken, remained intact. He recognized that everything he had was a gift from God, and that God had the right to take it away. But Job's trial was far from over. Satan, unsatisfied with the outcome, returned to God's throne with a new challenge. And this time, the target would be Job's own body. Painful sores covered Job from head to toe, and he sat among the ashes, scraping his wounds with a piece of pottery. It was at this moment of profound affliction that Job's wife, also overwhelmed by loss and suffering, approached him. Her words, born of despair, were like a dagger in Job's already wounded heart. "Do you still maintain your integrity? Curse God and die." Job 2, verse 9. Job, having already lost everything, now covered in painful wounds, and his own life partner suggesting that he abandon his faith. It's a final and devastating test of his conviction. But Job's response is of a wisdom and faith hard to believe. He rebukes his wife, saying, "You speak like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God, and shall we not accept evil?" Even in the face of this final temptation to give up, Job maintains his integrity and his faith in God. Job's refusal to curse God and die is a powerful testament to his unwavering faith. He chooses to trust in God, even when he doesn't understand why he's suffering, even when the easiest solution seemed to be to give up. How will Job continue to face this relentless wave of suffering? Will his faith remain steadfast when physical pain joins emotional distress? And where are Job's friends in this time of dire need? The news of the tragedies that struck Job spread quickly through the land of Uz. It wasn't long before three of his closest friends heard of his misfortune: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. These men, known for their wisdom and social standing, decided to visit Job to comfort and console him. When they finally arrived, they could barely recognize their friend. Job, once a majestic and respected man, was now sitting in the ashes, covering himself in dust and scraping his wounds with a piece of pottery. His body was covered in painful sores, from the soles of his feet to the top of his head, the second trial allowed by God at Satan's request. The shock was so great that the three friends tore their clothes, threw dust on their heads, and sat down with Job on the ground. And then, they did something extraordinary for the standards of the time. They remained silent for 7 days and 7 nights. This initial silence was a cultural practice of mourning, a form of respect for the immense pain of their friend. They saw Job's suffering and were simply present, sharing his anguish without words. Imagine the scene: 4 men sitting in silence, day after day, night after night. The desert wind blew around them, kicking up dust. The sun rose and set 7 times, and still no word was spoken. This silence, however, was fraught with tension. Job's friends, like many in their time, believed that suffering was always the result of sin. Seeing Job's miserable condition, they couldn't help but wonder, what did Job do to deserve this? For 7 days, these questions fermented in their minds. For 7 days, Job endured not only the physical and emotional pain of his losses, but also the weight of the questioning looks of his friends. Finally, on the 8th day, the silence was broken. Job opened his mouth and began to speak, giving voice to his anguish and questioning the day of his birth. His words would open the floodgates for one of the deepest and most agonizing debates recorded in the Holy Bible. As the debate unfolds, we will see how words can be both a balm and a sword, and how even the best-intentioned friends can fail to offer the necessary comfort in times of deep pain. Job's lament. The silence of a week was broken by a cry of pain that echoed through the land of Uz. Job, the man who once praised the Lord's name in times of difficulty, now cursed the day he was born. "May the day I was born perish," Job cried, his voice filled with suffering. "And the night that it was said, a boy is conceived. Job's words were sincere and painful, showing a torment that went beyond the body. Imagine the scene. Job, covered in wounds, his skin bruised, sitting in the middle of the dust. His eyes, once full of wisdom, now had no gleam from so much suffering. His beard, once well-groomed, was unkempt and dirty. And from his mouth, which once spoke good things, now came bitter complaints. "Why was I not killed at birth?" he asked. "Why did I not die when I came out of my mother's womb?" Job longed for the peace of death, seeing it as a welcome escape from his endless pain. His friends listened, astonished. Was this the Job they knew? The righteous man who respected God? His words seemed offensive, a challenge to God's own creation. But Job didn't stop there. He questioned God's justice. Why is light given to those who are in misery, and life to those who have a sorrowful soul, who long for death, but it does not come? It was as if Job's own faith was crumbling. He didn't deny that God existed, but he doubted his goodness and justice. How could a righteous God let a good man suffer so much? Job's words were a cry for help, a desperate plea for explanations. He didn't understand why he was suffering, and in his affliction, he challenged the Creator himself to give him an answer. Job's friends listened silently, their faces showing a mixture of fear and concern. To them, such words were dangerous, almost an offense to God. They felt they needed to speak, correct Job's thinking, and remind him of his place before God. Little did they know that their attempts at consolation would only worsen Job's pain. The stage was set for an argument about God, raising questions about the nature of suffering, divine justice, and the limits of human understanding. Eliphaz, the eldest and supposedly the wisest, was the first to break the silence. His voice was gentle, but his words cut like a sharp sword. "Job," he began, "you have comforted many in difficult times. Now it's your turn to listen. Think carefully. Who, being innocent, has ever perished?" Job's face twisted in a mixture of pain and indignation. He didn't expect his suffering to be questioned by those he called friends. In a hoarse voice, he replied, "My anguish should be heavy, all my calamity placed on the scales, for now it would be heavier than the sand of the seas." The debate had begun, and it wouldn't be long before sparks flew. Bildad, impatiently, interrupted. "How long will you speak such things? The words of your mouth are like a rushing wind." He was convinced that Job's suffering was the result of some hidden sin. Zophar, the youngest and most impetuous of the group, could barely contain his irritation. "Will all this talk go unanswered?" he exclaimed. "Will this chatterbox be considered righteous?" As the accusations intensified, Job found himself fighting not only against his physical pain, but also against the judgment of his supposed comforters. His responses became increasingly passionate and desperate. "You are all useless doctors," Job cried in a moment of frustration. "If only you would keep quiet, that would be your wisdom." What had started as a visit of consolation quickly turned into an impromptu court, with Job in the dock and his friends as relentless judges. Each round of arguments deepened the chasm between them, revealing not only their different views on God and suffering, but also the fragility of their friendship. The air was thick with anticipation. After weeks of intense debates, anguished laments, and bitter accusations, a heavy silence fell upon Job and his companions. The sky, once clear, began to darken. Dark and dense clouds gathered on the horizon, advancing rapidly. The wind began to howl, increasing in intensity with every moment. Suddenly, a lightning bolt ripped through the sky, followed by a deafening thunderclap that made the earth tremble. It was as if all of creation was bowing before the arrival of its creator. From the midst of this stormy whirlwind, a majestic and terrifying voice was heard. "Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Prepare yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me." It was Jehovah, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the I Am, answering from the midst of the storm. Job had cried out for an audience with the Almighty, and now his desire was fulfilled in a way as unexpected as it was overwhelming. God did not begin by offering comfort or explanations. Instead, he posed a series of questions that demonstrated his infinite wisdom and the limited understanding of humans. "Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me, if you have so much understanding, who determined its measures? Surely you know. Who stretched out the line on it? On what were its foundations set? or who laid its cornerstone, when the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? The Creator continued, describing wonders of nature that men barely understood. Who shut in the sea with doors when it burst forth from the womb, when I clothed it with clouds and made it thick darkness, when I set bounds for it and set bars and doors, when I said, thus far you may come, but no farther. Here your proud waves must stop. He described his control over the seasons and the rains. Can you raise your voice to the clouds, that a flood of water may cover you? Can you send out lightnings, that they may say to you, here we are? Who has given wisdom to the heart, or understanding to the mind? Who has wisdom to count the clouds? Who can pour out the bottles of heaven when the dust clumps together and the clods of earth stick together? The questions continued, ranging from the mysteries of creation to the secrets of nature. God spoke of the stars, the seas, wild animals, things that were far beyond human comprehension. With each question, Job and his friends felt smaller. The man who had once challenged God to explain himself now trembled before his overwhelming presence. After the first divine speech, Job, completely humbled, replied, I am unworthy. How can I answer you? Before this overwhelming demonstration of divine power and wisdom, Job finally understood the magnitude of his ignorance. Prostrated, he declared, I know that you can do everything. No plan of yours can be thwarted. You asked, who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? It is true that I have spoken of things that I did not understand, things too wonderful for me, things I did not know. You said, listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me. My ears had already heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore, I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. God's answer did not provide a direct explanation for Job's suffering. Instead, it revealed a profound truth. There are mysteries in the universe that are beyond human understanding. God's control and wisdom extend far beyond what we can imagine or question. This manifestation of God not only silenced Job's complaints, but also exposed the arrogance of his friends, who presumed to understand God's ways completely. Everyone was reminded of their smallness in the face of the Creator's greatness. The encounter with God profoundly transformed Job. He went from a man demanding answers to someone bowing in humble worship. His faith, once based on what he heard about God, was now grounded in a personal and powerful encounter. But the story wouldn't end there. What would happen to Job after this transformative encounter? The outcome of this story would bring surprising lessons. Job's life was completely transformed. His health was restored, his family and social relationships were reestablished, and his material possessions were not only recovered, but doubled. He was blessed with new sons and daughters, and he lived a long and prosperous life. This miraculous turnaround not only closed a chapter of intense suffering, but also inaugurated a new phase of blessings and renewal. The story of Job is not just an ancient account. It is a beacon of hope for all of us. When we face our own trials, we can remember Job and find strength to persevere. We can trust that, just as God restored Job, he can also bring renewal and blessings into our lives, often in ways we never imagined. And if you still did, I want to remind you that the Christian Survival Manual is pinned in the first comment below this video. Download your copy before it's gone. And if you are not yet subscribed to our channel, I invite you to subscribe now. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it. May God bless you. Until next time.